All right, with the carburetor, we're gonna just run it through the parts washer just to knock some of that large grit and dirt off the outside of it. We're not too worried about the inside of it right now. Okay, now that we have the outside of the carb cleaned off, we can go ahead with this assembly, and we'll run this carb through an ultrasonic cleaner and clean the interior. We're going to need a flathead screwdriver for our fuel mixture screw, idle screw. We're going to need a T15 Torx bit and a T25 Torx bit as well. So the first thing we'll do is remove our fuel line. My clip is broken here, so I'm gonna kind of have to muscle it off. So there's my clip. Normally what you would just squeeze your clip and move it back, and then you can pull the hose off. It might make you work for it a little bit. There you go. Then we can pull our little shield off here. What this does is it's designed to face up so that any snow or water doesn't get into it when you're drilling. And remove that. You can see that there's a gasket on the intake and the intake side of the that meets the motor. I don't have those in my rebuild kit, so I basically just got a diaphragm and some of the internal, the jet or the needle and seat. So I'm not going to mess with those. I don't want to rip those gaskets. I'm going to run this through ultrasonic, so I won't damage those gaskets when I do. If you're going to use a carb cleaner, go ahead and use a knife and just pick them off carefully so you don't rip them, or you can just buy them and replace them. Then we can flip the carb over, and we'll remove
these 4 screws to get at that diaphragm.
that just pops off, and there's our diaphragm there. And this diaphragm doesn't look too bad, but it's going to get replaced. This is generally the piece that that goes bad. It gets hard and stops pumping fuel, so that's what stops your auger from running. Yeah, so my gasket's falling apart as I take it off. So that's not the kind of thing that you want to reuse. You want to buy a kit for it. If you're gonna rip the carb apart to this length, it just rips apart. So you don't want to risk it and try to save that. So once that's off, we can back out our screws here. We just want to make sure we know where they're at. So we're just going to run them in. That one's not even a half a turn out. So you can see there's a little brass washer there. Be careful you get that. I believe this one's going to have the same. Yeah. So there's that little brass washer, which means there's two O-rings inside here as well. Some kind of a gasket or an O-ring. So you just get a little hook, some kind of a pick. You can make one, use one. There's one there. There's the second one. Kind of fought me a little bit, but you want to get those out. This is your idle screw. You don't need to remove that. You can just leave that in place. You can leave all this stuff attached. So next we want to get that needle out. So let me just grab a socket that'll fit that, and we'll be back. Okay, looks like that is a 932. So we can just pop that out. You can see that we've got there's our needle. A little spring on the back side. It doesn't look like there's anything else in there. Just make sure before we start to put compressed air or anything onto these carburetors, because you'll fling that across the room and you'll never find it again. So just make sure you've got everything out of your orifices here, and you should be good. So that's ready to go right into a ultrasonic cleaner, just like that. If you were just using a regular carb spray, you could just spray out. You can see that there's plugs right here. There's another plug here. It's a task to pull those out. So if your carb is really bad, that's when you'd want to drill and pop those out of there, and you can repound in the new ones that come in the kit. I don't recommend doing that. It's pretty tough to get those sealed up again, unless you've done it a bunch of times. It's not too bad, but I wouldn't recommend it. Really, probably the reason that your carb's not running is that diaphragm has dried out and just stopped pumping fuel. So that's probably the biggest problem there. So we'll get this through the ultrasonic cleaner, get it all cleaned up, and then we'll come back for a reassembly. Okay, reassembly. You can see that my gaskets, the one on the front and one on the back, they stayed in place. So what I did was when I pulled this out of the ultrasonic cleaner here, I took it in, ran under hot water, brought it out, blew out all the orifices, and that should be good enough. A lot of times in the wintertime I'll put this on the heating vent and just let it sit there for half an hour, or if it's in the summertime I'll just stick it out on the hood of the car and just let some sun get at it and heat up and make sure that any moisture is out of it. But I think you're fine just blowing it out. So now you just want to make sure that you've got all of your mating surfaces clean. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll scrape all that off with a blade before it goes into cleaning, but you can see this bottom cap's pretty nasty. So what I'll do, just take a piece of sandpaper and you can just give it a, really it's just a mating surface, so it doesn't need to be. As long as you've got a nice clean mating surface, you should be okay. Same with the carb body. Okay, so we'll take a look at what we've got on our kit. We know what we're going to use right off the bat. We're going to use that gasket and the diaphragm. Looks like it comes with a new seat. I don't know that we're going to use that. I think we're going to stick with all the original stuff. So I'll replace any. We know we're not going to use any of these plugs. And just compare parts. Looking at these springs, this is the spring that came out of it, that finer looking spring. Hopefully you can see that. There's a finer looking, and this is the one that came out of it, and this is the one that came in the kit. I'm going to stick with the original. So kind of just pick and choose the parts that you think are worthy, and really, like I said, probably 9 times out of 10 you're looking for that diaphragm. So okay, so let's start reassemble. This first piece had a small gasket on it, so we'll find a new one. I'm guessing that that's it there. And then we had our needle, and then we had our spring. Just now you want to do it by hand as much as you can, right up until it starts to tighten. Then we'll grab our socket and tighten it down, not too hard. We're not stripping anything out today. And then we can go ahead with our diaphragm and gasket. I normally just make sure that needle is working. You can feel that needle working. And then we can lay on our diaphragm. Diaphragm goes big side down. And diaphragm first. So we go diaphragm, and then gasket on top. Line all that up, and we can drop our cap over top. So this is where you want to try and hold it together, so you're pinching everything together. And once you get one screw in there, you can kind of run it in, not tighten it up too much, but that'll hold everything together for you, and you can line up the rest of it. And when you're happy with it, you can tighten it down. And we can move over to our jets. Our jets are needles. What I did was I just dropped them in a jar with a bit of carb cleaner. I didn't want to put them through the ultrasonic, so make sure you got your two brass washers, and we can give these a so there. So in here we have two O-rings that need to go in first. So we'll put the first one in. And the second one is kind of deep down in there. What you can do with these ones, if it doesn't want to lay in there, once you've got it somewhat located in there, you can take the back end of a drill bit and kind of seat those two in. So let me grab a drill bit. Maybe go a little bigger than that. So you're just using the one end of the drill bit. Just to seat those in. So the first one goes in, you kind of want to hold this up and drop the carb body onto it. Make sure you get it into the right. So you run it down so it just seats. And this one was, there's half a turn, there's one, and a bit. So that's where that one was sitting. We're going to adjust these once we get the motor back together and fired up. So again, you run that one in just till it seats. You can't turn anymore without too much pressure. And I'll back that one out a half a turn, which is where it was sitting, which I think is wrong. So we'll adjust that once we get the carb back on. and fire it up. Okay, so now we can put our cap on. And then our fuel line, pop that back on. We broke our clamp, so we're going to put a new clamp on, aka zip tie. We'll just cut that tag in and off for a zip tie. And there you go. We should be able to pop that back on the auger and fire it up. We'll adjust our high and low speeds with our fuel mixture screws here, and you should be good to go. A lot of times, if you're having problems with these, it is that diaphragm. So what you can do is, if you're not comfortable with your settings, your high-low idle adjusts, you can just leave them in place, spray out the carburetor as best you can, but as long as you replace that diaphragm, that's generally what the problem is, unless the carb is like really bad, really dirty bad. These things do more sitting than they do cut nice, so generally what happens is things dry out. So that's normally what the problem is. So there you go.